Davies Eli David Ruffin was an American soul singer and musician most famous for his work as one of the lead singers of The Temptations during the group's Classic Five period as it was later known. He was the lead voice on such famous songs as My Girl, and Ain't Too Proud to Beg. Known for his unique raspy and anguished tenor vocals, Ruffin was ranked as one of the 100 greatest singers of all time by Rolling Stone magazine in 2008. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989 for his work with The Temptations. Fellow Motown recording artist Marvin Gaye once said admiringly of Ruffin that, "I heard, in his voice a strength my own voice lacked." Early life: Ruffin was born Davis Eli Ruffin in the rural unincorporated community of Enot, Mississippi, 15 miles from Meridian, Mississippi. He was the third-born son of Elias Eli Ruffin, a Baptist minister, and Ophelia Ruffin. His siblings were Quincy B. Ruffin, Rita Mae Ruffin, and Jimmy L. Ruffin. Ruffin also had another sister, who died in infancy. Ancestry: his parents were both natives of Mississippi. His father Eli worked as a truck driver at a lumber mill and his mother Ophelia worked out of their home. As far as the ancestry of the Ruffin family, Eli's parents had moved from Alabama to Mississippi, because of the harsh circumstances of living after the American Civil War. Prior to living in Alabama, David Ruffin's great-grandparents, John Ruffin and Clara Ruffin, had moved from Bertie County, North Carolina. John Ruffin was a Civil War veteran, fighting with the 14th United States Colored Heavy Artillery Regiment. Childhood and adolescence: Ruffin's father was strict and at times violently abusive. Ruffin's mother died just months after his birth in 1941. And his father married a schoolteacher, Erline, in 1942. As a young child, Ruffin, along with his other siblings, traveled with their father and their stepmother as a family gospel group, opening shows for Mahalia Jackson and the Five Blind Boys of Mississippi, among others. Ruffin sang in the choir at Mount Salem Methodist Church, talent shows and wherever else he could. In 1955, at the age of 14, he left home under the guardianship of a minister and went to Memphis, Tennessee, with the purpose of pursuing the ministry. At age 15, Ruffin went to Hot Springs, Arkansas with the jazz musician Phineas Newborn, Sr. There, he played at the 50 Grand Ballroom and Casino. Ruffin continued to sing at talent shows, worked with horses at a jockey club and eventually became a member of the Dixie Nightingales. He also sang with the Soul Stirrers briefly after the departure of Johnny Taylor. It was in Ruffin's travels as a teenager that he met such later popular personalities as Elvis Presley, Little Richard, Frankie Lymon, Bobby Womack, the Staple Singers, Swan Silvertons and the Dixie Hummingbirds. After some of his singing idols like Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson had left gospel music and gone secular, Ruffin also turned in that direction. The 16-year-old Ruffin met and came under the guardianship of Eddie Bush and his wife Dorothy Helen, who took the teenager to Detroit, Michigan, where his brother Jimmy was pursuing a career in music while working at the Ford Motor Company. Career: early years: after moving to Detroit with the Bushes, Ruffin recorded his first released record with the songs You and I Believe Me. These songs were recorded at Vega Records and released under the name Little David Bush, using the last name of the man he was living with at the time, Eddie Bush. Ruffin would later recall how he initially recorded a different kind of music, strongly influenced by the smoother pop and R&B of the time, when he first recorded in Detroit for Vega. In 1957, Ruffin met Berry Gordy, Jr., then a songwriter with ambitions of running his own label. Ruffin lived with Gordy's father, a contractor, and helped Pops Gordy do construction work on the building that would become Hitsville USA, the headquarters for Gordy's Tamla Records label. Ruffin's brother Jimmy would eventually be signed to Tamla's Miracle Records label as an artist. Ruffin also worked alongside another ambitious singer, Marvin Gaye, as an apprentice at Anna Records, a chess-distributed label run by Gordy's sister Gwen Gordy Fuqua and his songwriting partner Billy Davis. Asked about Ruffin in the Detroit Free Press in 1988, Gordy Fuqua said, "He was very much a gentleman, yes ma'am and no ma'am, but the thing that really impressed me about David was that he was one of the only artists I've seen who rehearsed like he was on stage. Eventually, Ruffin started recording at Anna Records, and recorded the song I'm in Love BW One of These Days, with the voice masters, which included future Motown producer Lamont Dozier and members of the singing group The Originals T.Y. Hunter, C.P. Spencer, Hank Dixon and voice masters and The Originals founder Walter Gaines. Ruffin eventually met an up-and-coming local group by the name of The Temptations. His older brother Jimmy Ruffin went on a Motown review tour with The Temptations, and he told David that they needed someone to sing tenor in their group. Ruffin showed interest in joining the group to Otis Williams, whom he lived very close to in Detroit. In January 1964, Ruffin became a member of The Temptations after founding member Elbridge Al Bryant was fired from the group. Though both David and his brother Jimmy were considered, David was given an edge over Jimmy thanks to his performance skills, which David displayed when he joined The Temptations on stage during the New Year's Eve party in 1963. With The Temptations, the bespectacled Ruffin initially sang backgrounds, while the role of lead singer mostly alternated between Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams. He did sing a few lead parts both on stage and in the studio during his first year with the group, but his leads on these studio tracks would not be released for over a year, as they were considered not good enough to showcase Ruffin's vocals. Smokey Robinson, who produced and co-wrote most of The Temptations' material at this point, saw Ruffin during this period as a sleeping giant in the group with a unique voice that was mellow, yet gruff. Robinson thought that if he could write just the perfect song for Ruffin's voice, then he could have a smash hit. The song was to be something that Ruffin could belt out, yet something that was also melodic and sweet. That song, My Girl, was recorded in November 1964 and released a month later, became the group's first #1 single in 1965. My Girl became The Temptations' signature song and elevated Ruffin to the role of lead singer and frontman. The follow-ups to My Girl were also extremely successful singles, including the Ruffin-led hits It's Growing, Since I Lost My Baby, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Beauty Is Only Skin Deep, I Know, I'm Losing You, All I Need, Loneliness Made Me Realize, It's You That I Need, I Wish It Would Rain, and I Could Never Love Another. Ruffin also shared lead vocals on the 1967 hit single You're My Everything with Eddie Kendricks. The tall, 6'3 inches, Ruffin's passionate and dramatic performances endeared him to The Temptations' audiences and fans. According to Otis Williams, Ruffin was initially a natural comedian and a hard-working singer when he first joined the group. Ruffin's most notable non-vocal contribution to The Temptations was the masterminding of their trademark four-headed microphone stand. By 1967, however, ego problems with Ruffin became an issue for the group. He became addicted to cocaine and began missing rehearsals and performances. Refusing to travel with the other Temptations, Ruffin and his then-girlfriend Tammy Terrell traveled in a custom limo. After the Supremes had their name changed to Diana Ross and the Supremes in early 1967, Ruffin felt that he should become the focal point of The Temptations, just as Diana Ross was for her group, and began demanding that the group name be changed to David Ruffin and The Temptations. This led to a number of disagreements between Ruffin and the group's de facto leader, Otis Williams. In addition to the group's problems with Ruffin's ego, he began inquiring into The Temptations' financial records, demanding an accounting of the group's money. This caused friction between Ruffin and Gordy. In June 1968, The Temptations agreed that Ruffin had finally crossed the line when he missed a June 22 Cleveland, Ohio date with The Temptations to instead attend a performance by his new girlfriend, Barbara Gayle Martin. Ruffin was fired on June 27 and replaced with Dennis Edwards, a former member of the Contours who had been a friend of Ruffin and the group as a whole beforehand. Though Ruffin himself personally encouraged Edwards to take his place, Ruffin began turning up unannounced at Temptations concerts during Edwards' first few dates with the group. When the group started to perform a Ruffin-era songs such as My Girl, or Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Ruffin would suddenly walk onto the stage, take the microphone from Edwards' hands, and steal the show, embarrassing the group but entertaining the fans. According to Edwards, The adulation and Ruffin's pleas convinced the other four Temptations to give Ruffin a second chance, but when he arrived late to what was to be his return show with the group in Gaithersburg, Maryland, the Temptations decided to keep Edwards and drop considerations of rehiring Ruffin. In October 1968, Ruffin filed suit against Motown Records, seeking a release from the label and an accounting of his money. Motown countersued to keep the singer from leaving the label and eventually the case was settled. The settlement required Ruffin to remain with Motown to finish out his initial contract. Solo years and personal issues. Ruffin's first solo single was a song originally intended for the Temptations, My Whole World Ended. The single from the album entitled My Whole World Ended was released in 1969, followed soon by the album Feelin' Good. The single reached the US Pop and R&B Top 10. A third album, titled David, was recorded in 1970-71, but was shelved by Motown and did not see a commercial release until 2004. His next official release for Motown did not arrive until 1973, when David Ruffin was released. His final top 10 hit was 1975's Walk Away from Love, produced by Van McCoy, which reached number 9 on the pop chart. It sold over 1 million copies, and was awarded a gold disc by the RIAA. In February 1976. Other notable recordings from Ruffin's solo career include I Lost Everything I've Ever Loved, the gospel-inflected I'm So Glad I Fell for You, Blood Donors Needed, Common Man, No Matter Where, Who I Am, Statue of a Fool, and cover versions of the Jackson 5's I Want You Back, Rainy Night in Georgia popularized by Brooke Benton, and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes' I Miss You, featuring Eddie Kendrick. In 1970 Ruffin recorded an album with his brother Jimmy, I Am My Brother's Keeper, for which they had minor hits with When My Love Hand, and Your Love Was Worth Waiting For. While his solo career initially showed promise, Ruffin reportedly went into decline in part because of his cocaine addiction and the lack of support from Motown. After leaving Motown in 1977, Ruffin recorded for Warner Brothers Records, releasing the album So Soon We Change and Gentleman Ruffin, and later signed with RCA Records, accompanied by former Temptations bandmate Eddie Kendrick, who chose to rekindle their friendship when Kendrick himself started experiencing problems with the Temptations. In 1982, Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks rejoined the Temptations for the recording of their album Reunion and the tour to promote the album. Reunion included the R&B hit Standing on the Top with Rick James. The Reunion tour, however, was short-lived as Ruffin started to miss shows due to his cocaine addiction, leading the group to be fined thousands of dollars. Otis Williams fired Ruffin for the second and final time from the group along with Kendricks by Christmas 1982. Ruffin started touring with Kendrick as a duo act in 1985. In 1982, Ruffin was sentenced to 6 months in a low-security prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, for failing to pay taxes during the mid-1970s. On May 19, 1986, he pleaded no contest to a charge of receiving and concealing stolen property worth less than $100 and was fined $50 plus $100 in court costs. Charges of assault and battery and receiving stolen property worth more than $100 were dropped. A 1987 cocaine arrest landed him in jail for repeated parole violations. In 1985, longtime Temptations fans Hall and Oates teamed up with Ruffin and Kendrick to perform at the reopening of the Apollo Theater in New York. Their performance was released as a relatively successful live album and single. The four singers also sang a medley of Temptations hits at Live Aid on July 13, 1985. John Oates later wrote a minor hit single for Ruffin and Kendrick, but the two duos fell out, allegedly due to Darrell Hall's objections to Ruffin's heavy drug use. After being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in 1989, with the other Temptations, Ruffin, Kendrick and Dennis Edwards began touring and recording as Ruffin Edwards, former leads of the Temptations. On August 17, 2013 in Cleveland, Ohio, the official R&B Music Hall of Fame inducted David Ruffin as a solo artist and also a member of the Temptations. His family was on hand for this great honor. Personal life: Ruffin was married twice. His first marriage was to Sandra Ruffin in 1961, with whom he had 3 daughters, Cheryl, Netra and Kimberly. In 1976, Ruffin married Joy Hamilton. He also had one son he named David Ruffin Jr. with his former girlfriend Genis Sapir, who after his death would add Ruffin to her last name in tribute to their long-term relationship, as well as to the fact that they had a son together. The two lived as husband and wife, but were never legally married. Ruffin also had a well-publicized relationship with Motown label mate and Marvin Gaye duet partner, singer Tammy Terrell. Death: after a successful month-long tour of England with Kendricks and Edwards, Ruffin died on June 1, 1991, in a Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, hospital of an adverse reaction to drugs, namely cocaine. Although the cause of death was ruled an accident, Ruffin's family and friends suspected foul play, claiming that a money belt containing the proceeds from the tour was missing from his body. He had just finished recording the single Hurt the One You Love for Motor City Records. In the Temptations television miniseries, Ruffin's beaten body is depicted as being thrown from a moving car in front of a hospital, where he dies. Also stated in the miniseries was that his body remained unclaimed in a morgue for a week after his death. As a result, Ruffin's estate filed suit against NBC and other major players involved in the making of the series, claiming defamation. According to the plaintiffs in the case, Ruffin was actually taken to the hospital by a limousine and was escorted to the waiting area by his driver, who informed the attendants of his identity. The Ruffin children further state that his body was claimed by one of them within a few days after his death. Legacy: Ruffin had many admirers among his fellow artists, mainly for the emotive power he brought to every song he sang. "Nobody could sing like David Ruffin," said his close friend and colleague Martha Reeves. His contemporary, labelmate, and longtime acquaintance Marvin Gaye was particularly impressed with the virility of Ruffin's voice. Gaye said, "Ruffin's work made me remember that when a lot of women listen to music, they want to feel the power of a real man." Darrell Hall of Hall and Oates, one of Ruffin's biggest fans, said, "His voice had a certain glorious anguish that spoke to people on many emotional levels." Ruffin himself said, "I don't know what kind of voice I have, I really don't. It's just about the feeling I get for the song." The raspy-voiced Rod Stewart fell in love with Ruffin's voice after he heard "I Wish It Would Rain." "It jumped out of the speakers and ravished my soul," Stewart exclaimed. Stewart would later become friends with Ruffin. "His voice was so powerful, like a foghorn on the Queen Mary," Stewart told Rolling Stone magazine. For all of his nearly 40 years in the music business, much of it with modest success, Ruffin is remembered almost exclusively for his relatively brief stint in the Temptations. The cover art of his last album Gentleman Ruffin was the inspiration on the art of rapper Wiz Khalifa's mixtape Kush and Orange Juice. In popular culture, in 1998, NBC aired The Temptations, a 4-hour television miniseries about the group's career. Ruffin was portrayed by Leon Robinson. The actor won high praise for his portrayal of Ruffin, but Ruffin's family was upset by the way the miniseries portrayed Ruffin and filed a lawsuit against the producers of the miniseries and also Otis Williams, whose memoir had been the source material for the miniseries. The case was dismissed in favor of the defendants, with Williams later claiming that he had no real control over the presentation of the material. Grand Puba of Brand Nubian referenced the singer on the 1990 single All for One, stating, "I hit a beat and swing a note as if my name was David Ruffin." Rapper Machine Gun Kelly also referenced the singer on his 2013 song See My Tears, stating, "Fought every temptation shit, I guess Euro unregistered trademark M David Ruffin huh?" The first song on Fall Out Boy's 2005 CD From Under the Cork Tree was to have been titled My Name is David Ruffin. And These Are the Temptations, but for legal reasons, the name was changed. Hope Styles used Ruffin's song and referred his name on their hip-hop single Lookin' Boy. American rap rock group Gym Class Heroes references Ruffin in the 2008 song Like Father, Like Son from their album The Quilt, stating, "I never understood temptation. But I guess we both got a little David Ruffin in us." Solo discography. Studio albums, 1969, My Whole World Ended, 1969, Feelin' Good, 1970, I Am My Brother's Keeper, 1971, David, 1973, David Ruffin, 1974, Me and Rock and Roll Are Here to Stay, 1975, Who I Am, 1976, Everything's Coming Up Love, 1977, In My Stride, 1979, So Soon We Change, 1980, Gentleman Ruffin, 1988, Ruffin and Kendrick, references. External links. David Ruffin at the Internet Movie Database, David Ruffin at AllMusic, audio interview David Ruffin Eddie Kendrick, David Ruffin at Find a Grave, Ruffin phone app first ever phone app dedicated to David Ruffin view photos and videos and also buy merchandise from it http://www.upcatch.com/ app_Ruffin_fan_app-221237.html